Deep in the heart of Bavaria, far from the nearest village, lay a farm, Hinterkaifeck. The name itself seemed to whisper of isolation, of secrets kept. It sat alone, surrounded by dense woods, a solitary sentinel under an often grey sky. In the twilight hours, as shadows stretched long and menacing, the farmhouse could appear almost swallowed by the encroaching darkness. A place where the silence was profound, a heavy blanket over the land. But this quiet, this deep, rural stillness was about to be shattered, irrevocably, violently, leaving behind a mystery that would chill the bones of Germany for generations to come, a tale that still echoes through those very woods. The year was 1922, a time of unease in post-war Germany. But out here, at Hinterkaifeck, the world's troubles often felt distant, a murmur on the wind. Or so one might think. The farm was a world unto itself, its inhabitants largely keeping to their own affairs. The nearest road was a considerable trek, the nearest neighbours almost out of earshot. This isolation, once perhaps a comfort, would soon become a terrifying vulnerability. For when trouble arrived, it would arrive unseen, unheard by the outside world, until it was far, far too late. The fields were tilled, the animals tended, but an undercurrent, a feeling, was beginning to stir. The wind often howled around the gables of the old farmhouse, a mournful sound. It carried the scent of pine and damp earth, the very essence of the Bavarian wilderness. Did it also carry warnings? Did the rustling leaves whisper of impending doom? Locals would later say so, of course. Hindsight paints vivid pictures. But even before the horror, there was a sense, perhaps, that Hinterkaifeck was a place apart. A place where the ordinary rules didn't quite apply. A place that held its breath, waiting for something unimaginable. And as the days of March 1922 drew to a close, that waiting was nearly over. The crisp air held a tension, an unspoken dread that seemed to seep from the very soil. The nights grew longer, darker, and inside the walls of Hinterkaifeck, a sequence of strange, unsettling events began to unfold. Small things at first, easily dismissed, but they were harbingers. Each one a tiny crack in the facade of rural normalcy, hinting at the terrifying abyss that lay just beyond. The silence was about to break. Living within those isolated walls was the Gruber family. A family with its own complexities, its own whispered about histories. Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, was 63. A stern man by most accounts, not well liked by some in the nearby village of Kaifeck. His wife, Kazilia, 72, was frail, her life etched with the hardships of farm work. They were a hard-working pair, their days dictated by the seasons and the demands of the land. A familiar rhythm, soon to be brutally interrupted. They had seen much, these two, but nothing could prepare them for what was coming. Then there was their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35. Her husband had been declared dead in the Great War. Victoria lived on the farm with her 2 young children. 7-year-old Kazilia, named for her grandmother, a bright little girl, and 2-year-old Joseph, Victoria's son. Rumors swirled around Joseph's parentage, dark whispers that added to the family's somewhat insular reputation. These whispers, like many things at Hinterkaifeck, remained shrouded in local gossip and speculation. The truth, like so much else, was elusive. The Grubers were known to be private people. Their interactions with the outside world were often limited to necessities. This reclusiveness, while not uncommon in rural communities, perhaps contributed to their vulnerability. Fewer eyes watching over them, fewer casual visitors who might notice something amiss. They were, in many ways, on their own out there. Their world was the farm, the fields, the barn, the house, a self-contained existence that would soon become their prison and then, their tomb. The rhythm of their lives, so predictable, was about to falter. Just days before the unthinkable, a new maid arrived at Hinterkaifeck, Maria Baumgartner, 44 years old. Her predecessor had left abruptly, claiming the house was haunted. She spoke of strange noises, of feeling an oppressive presence. Were these the imaginings of a superstitious woman? Or did she sense the darkness that was gathering, the evil that was drawing near? Maria tragically would have little time to form her own opinions. Her arrival marked the final act, the last few days before the silence of Hinterkaifeck would be broken by screams, and then by an even deeper, more permanent quiet. The days leading up to that fateful Friday, March 31st, 1922, were filled with unsettling signs. Andreas Gruber himself spoke of them. He found a strange newspaper from Munich on his property, a newspaper no one in the family had purchased. Where did it come from? Who had left it there, so close to their home? It was a small thing, perhaps, but in the isolation of Hinterkaifeck, any deviation from the norm felt significant, a ripple in their quiet pond. A sign, perhaps, that they were being watched. Then there were the footsteps. Andreas told neighbors he'd heard them in the attic. Clear, distinct footsteps, creaking on the floorboards above. He'd searched, of course, climbed the ladder, peered into the dusty darkness. But he found no one. Nothing out of place, except for the lingering sense that someone had been there. An intruder. Unseen, undetected. The thought must have been deeply unnerving. Was it an animal? Or something far more sinister? The family was alone with no one to call for help. The mysteries didn't end there. A set of house keys went missing, vanished without a trace. Andreas also discovered scratches on the toolshed lock, as if someone had tried unsuccessfully to pick it. He even mentioned seeing footprints in the fresh snow leading from the dense woods to the farmhouse door. But strangely, there were no footprints leading away. It was as if someone had emerged from the forest, approached their home, and then, what? Disappeared into thin air? Or perhaps found their way inside. These occurrences painted a disturbing picture. Someone was lurking around Hinterkaifeck. Someone with an interest in the farm, in the family. Andreas, despite his stern demeanor, must have been worried. He spoke of these things, but he didn't go to the police. Perhaps he thought he could handle it himself. Or perhaps in that isolated place, the police felt too far away, too disconnected from their immediate growing fear. Whatever the reason, the warnings went unheeded. The unseen presence remained, biding its time. Days passed. No one saw the Grubers. The little Cazilia missed school. The mail piled up. Concern began to ripple through the small community. On Tuesday, April 4th, neighbors decided to investigate. What they found was a scene of unimaginable horror. A scene that would forever be seared into the local consciousness. In the barn, hidden beneath some hay, lay the bodies of Andreas Gruber, his wife Cazilia, their daughter Victoria, and young Cazilia. All brutally murdered. Their lives extinguished with a pickaxe. The farmhouse itself, when entered, revealed more tragedy. The new maid, Maria Baumgartner, was found dead in her bedchamber. And in Victoria's room, in his cot, lay little 2-year-old Joseph, also a victim of the same savage violence. 6 people. An entire family plus their maid wiped out. The initial investigation was bewildering. The perpetrator or perpetrators had apparently remained at the farm for some days after the killings. The livestock had been fed. Food had been eaten from the kitchen. It was a chilling detail. A killer who lingered among his victims. Who could have committed such a monstrous act? And why? Theories abounded. Was it robbery? Unlikely, as a significant sum of money was found untouched in the house. Revenge? Perhaps. Andreas Gruber had made enemies. There were whispers of Victoria's deceased husband somehow returning, or perhaps a jealous lover of Victoria's. Even Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who was presumed dead in France during the First World War, was considered, though his death seemed confirmed. The investigation explored numerous leads, interviewed countless individuals, but a clear suspect never emerged. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain unsolved. The files are officially closed, but the questions linger, hanging heavy in the Bavarian air. Who wielded the pickaxe? What was the motive for such complete and utter annihilation? The farmhouse was demolished a year later, as if to erase the terrible stain, but the story endures. A dark, seductive mystery. A chilling reminder that sometimes the deepest darkness resides not in the woods, but in the human heart. And sometimes the silence that follows a storm of violence is the most terrifying sound of all.